Okay, we're going to write for 2 minutes, either on paper or on your computer, whatever's on your mind. Let me start my little stopwatch. Okay, so again, if you feel like you've emptied your mind in the first minute, keep writing for a full 2 minute stream of consciousness. Let's begin. Be aware of breathing while you're writing. Breathe. 90 seconds left. Keep writing. One more minute. And if nothing comes to mind, start describing whatever you are feeling and sensing, and just write that down moment to moment. 30 seconds left. Ten seconds. Take a deep breath in, and now for 30 seconds, describe what you are feeling physically and emotionally. Just write it down. I feel. Could be achy, tired, excited, uncertain, physically and or emotionally. Breathe as you do it. 15 seconds. Breathe. 5 seconds. Take a deep breath in. Now, before we call conditions out loud, everybody mute your microphones. Here we go. Calling conditions out loud, whatever you're feeling physically and emotionally, for 30 seconds. I feel stiff. I feel sleepy. I feel curious. I feel amused. I feel surprised, delighted, present, open, receptive, achy, surprised. We have 5 more seconds. Keep going. I feel joyful. All right, take a deep breath in. So just to reiterate, the brain dump, very good tool for clearing the mind. Naming and calling conditions, a very good exercise to check in throughout the day. Where are you? What are you feeling? What are you experiencing in the present moment? And this leads into inner guidance. And today I want to talk about embodied listening to start with. And it's really listening through the whole body. We are trained and conditioned to focus on our thoughts, to listen with our ears or with our eyes, picking up information, taking it in, processing it, using that information to make choices. Embodied listening is much deeper. It's more multi-dimensional. It includes our gut, our heart, our instincts, our intuition, and our higher inner guidance that comes from our expanded soul self. So embodied listening requires that you are fully aligned and integrated in the present space time. And again, this is a little review. We're using the four connections of breath, center, ground, space to bring the mental body, anchor it into the physical body, connect to the ground, the floor, wherever you might be, and expand your awareness peripherally to include the space that you're in, wherever that might be. Breath, center, ground, space. Once you are present, you have to stay there because the mind wants to bounce around and leave this space and time and go into the mental field. And the mental field is a vast dimension in and of itself, in which there's a lot to explore and create, and you can get stuck there for quite some time. It's important that you notice when you mentally fragment and go a wandering through the mental fields, and then just gently bring it back. And this is central to all meditative practices, observing the mind's habit to want to explore, but bringing it back to a single point or object of attention. And for this practice, it's being in the body, in the breath. We use the four connections, breath, center, ground, space, and now we begin to create a fluid state of presence by softening our breath, our body, our focus in our eyes, the inner smile, breathing consistently. The fluid state is governed by breath. And so developing an awareness of breath is very important. Most people, especially when you're working throughout the day, don't really observe how they're breathing or even if they're breathing. And it is not uncommon when you are really focused, concentrating, that you stop breathing, or your breathing becomes so small, so diminished. And that what happens is you're focusing, you're not breathing, and then you realize, I'm not getting enough oxygen into my body, and you go, you take a huge breath and you go right back to that rigid focus again. Part of this process is to change that habit of working rigidly, of working as a finite container that fills up very quickly, and instead becoming soft and fluid moment to moment, breath to breath. Now, this is a coordinated, integrative process, and that requires practice. It's just coordination. So, you know how you rub your belly and pat your head? It's kind of awkward at first. This feels awkward to most people who are accustomed to focusing exclusively on the task at hand with little awareness of breathing and of what they are feeling and experiencing. It really goes into high mental gear. Soften, smile, breathe, listen. And listen in this context is through the whole body. So we do a body scan. We start about an arm's width above the head, and we just scan down through the body. And you can do that with the breath. So you can breathe in, start up here, exhale, scan through the body. What are you feeling? What are you experiencing? This is that embodied listening intention. The body is the most sensitive recording device on the planet. We are recording all of our experience continuously, moment to moment, all day, all night. We want to be able to tune into that internal reception and notice in the moment what we are feeling emotionally, And a lot of that's based on what we are focusing on mentally, how we're describing it, and how we are reacting to it. Another dimension is, what am I feeling in my emotional body, connected to my gut and my heart? And these are different dimensions than the mental field. Then we have instinct and intuition. So instinct is encoded into every animal on the planet. You know, you look at the wildlife videos of an animal being born in the wild. A giraffe gets born, and within minutes, they're on their feet and they are ready to start walking. They instinctively know that they must do that in order to survive. So instinct, which is encoded in us as human beings as well, is connected to our survival instinct. And I want to make a distinction here, because our survival instinct is separate from the fear of survival or not surviving. And as a martial artist, training over 50 years, we are trained to listen to that instinct, that feeling of safe, not safe. And this is a vibration in the body. It's a feeling. So you can be walking into an environment, into a room or down the street, and you feel comfortable and safe, and then that can change very quickly. You become aware of a feeling of vibration. And what you are picking up on is energy and intention. So in martial arts, we learn to read that intention. If somebody is acting aggressively or holding an ill intent toward us, we learn to feel that. It doesn't make sense to the intellect in the beginning, but it is a definite feeling. And when you train enough, you learn how to identify that feeling in your body. It's in your gut, it comes up into your solar plexus, and then into your chest, and then into your intellect, where you interpret that feeling. Oh, what is that feeling telling me? What's going on? Let me check my space. So in martial arts, when we're sparring with each other in class, eventually, when you turn off your intellect, you can feel the intention of your opponent when they intend to throw a punch or throw a kick, because they have to think about it first. And when they think about it, they mobilize their energy, then they direct their energy into the image of what they intend to do, punch or kick. We, as sensitive recording devices, pick up on that energy and that focused intention before it becomes an action. And so we sense that the attack is coming. And if we can keep our mind clear, we will develop an image eventually of it's either a hand or a foot that's coming. And step back, avoid, evade, escape, parry, and it becomes instinctual. That means we're not thinking about it. It's automatic. Now, we have been conditioned and taught that a little bit of fear is helpful because it keeps us safe. It warns us of danger. And I've been playing with this pretty much my whole life. And I finally came to the realization that it's not fear. It's our survival instinct, which is the excitement to action. That's what our survival instinct is. It is a different feeling than fear. Fear comes after that initial activation of excitement to action. And we feel that, and then we go into the mental field, the intellect, and we say, what's going on? Oh, I sense that somebody is focusing on me with aggression, and now I react to that based on how I interpret that. And it's natural to react fearfully. And that fear can be very mild, moderate, or severe. I just want you to be aware that they are different, that your survival instinct is immediate in the gut, anywhere from the top of the pubic bone up to your solar plexus. And it's almost like your abdomen will contract very deeply at the core. And that is that mobilization of energy into fight or flight. I have to be prepared to defend myself right now or run and escape. That's in a life-threatening situation. Most of the threats that we are going to face are not of the physical type, hopefully. They're of the emotional and psychological type. So, and that could be that you're walking into a meeting and you scan the room and you sense one or more people who are not in a good mood. And you feel that instantly. Now, there is an opportunity here to listen and ask the fourth question. We looked at the three questions. What do I need? What do I wish to experience? What do I choose to create? The fourth question is, what is? What is present? What is going on here? And when I ask that question, it's real time now in the present. And so I want to breathe as I ask that question, tune in and listen through my whole body as a fully embodied being. And if I'm open, not going into my mind too quickly, not interpreting and starting the chain reaction of emotional reaction, I will pick up on information from everybody in the room. And I will sense not only that this person's excited, that person's sleepy, this one is upset for whatever reason. I can now use that information to navigate the situation. What I want to be conscious of is that I don't make an immediate judgment on what I'm getting, such as, well, John from accounting is really upset. That must mean XYZ. He must have bad news. Oh my God, what could that news be? Now I'm using my imagination to create a what if scenario. And so I want to make a distinction between what is present, what if near or distant future. Everybody's walking around asking and projecting what if. What if this happens? What if this doesn't work out? What if I forget something? And that takes us into the near or distant future. Understand that that process is an imaginative one. We are taking a little bit of information and then taking it upstairs to the intellect and into the imagination, which are different levels. And we are now creating scenarios that may or may not have any relevance to the truth of the present. And if you start really examining the way that you are working and processing all day, you may realize that your what if scenarios often have little to do with reality. They have to do with your imagination. Now, imagination is really important in the process of inner guidance. And I'm going to get to more of that in just a moment. So instinct is really like that deeply programmed survival mechanism that warns us whether it's safe or unsafe. And it is a feeling in the body. It's not a thought. It can become a thought very quickly or not. You can continue to listen to that instinct without trying to interpret it. And what I mean by that is that you just stay present, centered and aligned in the present space-time, moment to moment, breath to breath. And it's kind of like you're waiting to get more information. Is there movement? Do I sense something that is changing in the moment? When we stop listening moment to moment, breath to breath, we disconnect from that present stream of input and information. And this is where we sometimes get into trouble, because we will start making choices based upon a snapshot, a frozen point in time. And then we will begin to elaborate on that with our what if imagination and start creating endless timelines of potential outcomes. Or we can stay present, continue to breathe, and just listen. Listen with the intent to respond to whatever happens, instead of try and second guess what we think might happen. So that's the role of instinct in this process. Intuition is part of our heart consciousness radar. Often when we get what I call a ping, P-I-N-G, and that's like a little bell that goes off instinctively, then I go up into my intuition, which is the heart center, and I want to do the same thing, which is listen and ask, what is? What's going on? What do I sense and feel at this level in the dimension of my conscious awareness, which is a higher vibration than your lower instinct of survival. And in that, I can, as well as anyone, yourself included, start to develop a sense through feeling of what is present through the heart. So last class I talked about observing with the mind without judgment or expectation, listening through the heart as a fluid process, and trusting your gut. So now I'm listening through my heart and through that intuitive sense. As I begin to feel through my heart, my mind and my imagination use the tools of imagination to translate the feeling that I'm getting into images, into words that I can begin to process intellectually. But there is a difference between using your imagination to translate and interpret your gut feeling and your heart feeling versus using your imagination to project into the near or distant future what if scenarios. We are so facile with our imagination, we don't realize how many different ways we can tune it and use it. Our nature is creative. We're creating our reality, our experience, our state of being all the time. We use our imagination to do that. Thoughts, imagination, intention, outcome. I want you to now start to become aware of the difference between using your imagination to interpret instinct and intuition into images and mental forms, thoughts, versus using your imagination to create out of a reactive state. The reactive state is one where you become aware of something, you judge it, you filter it, you interpret it according to your values and your beliefs, and then you react emotionally to support those values and beliefs. And so the emotional reaction in this instance is literally a reaction to your interpretation of reality. And we use the imagination now to create what if scenarios, most often to defend our point of view or our persona, our identity. And we use emotional energies like anger or outrage or fear, all in an attempt to support our point of view and defend it. It happens so fast that we're not conscious of it at all. We just do it, and this is what we call habitual reaction. It's just constantly reacting to life on autopilot without any real understanding that it's a habit, it's not considered. We're not taking a moment to pause, ground and center ourselves, tune in and ask what is going on. And when you ask that question of the present space-time, the goal is to get a clear, unfiltered sense of the truth of the moment, not a filtered, judgmental distortion of the truth based upon what you want or don't want, what you like or don't like. This is why when we observe with the mind, it's important to remove the filters of judgment and expectation, to get a clear, unvarnished view and clear perception. This is the biggest challenge, in my opinion, because we are so conditioned to put all these filters in terms of preferences and desires and beliefs and judgments, values, all that sort of thing. We look at anything in the now, in the present, and it has to come through all of these filters. And by the time it gets to our body, where we can really sense and feel it, it's completely distorted. And that's where we end up making not so clear choices, or choices that don't seem to work out very well, because we're making them out of an emotional reaction or out of the desire for something that most often is not connected to the truth of the moment. Do you have any questions up to this point?
Uh, it sounds really wonderful and ideal, but how does one I think it happens in such a split second, like the imagination and the meaning making and the
Mm-hmm.
interpretation that, I realize, I personally realized like 3 days later, oh, but in that moment, how does one develop that awareness or how does one create that space? Does that make
By
sense?
Yes, absolutely. by taking the moment to breathe into the body and listen to the body first before you go into the intellect and the mental field. To take that pause. I'm breathing in with the intention of sensing and feeling the vibration in my body. And now I'm going to consider that feeling with my mind, with my awareness. And I will also, at the same time, ask myself, what is present? What is this feeling communicating to me? Not what do I think? Not yet. That's the real work, is taking that pause. Take a few breaths. I like to work in multiples of 3 because you don't have to think about counting. And so I like to take 1 to 3 breaths to consider. Last week, Emery asked that question in terms of the timing. How can you tell the difference when your mind says no, don't do it, versus your body saying no, don't do it? Give yourself an opportunity to listen, to feel, and take that pause, that breath. Okay? It's the analogy I would say is you're doing a scene as an actor, and you've done the scene over and over and over again, hundreds of times. And to make it fresh, you have to listen to what is present and not assume that you know what's going to happen based upon your memory of the script. So I want to be responding spontaneously to the present. How do you do that? By feeling and sensing it, and by taking that moment to take a breath. Was that helpful? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have any other question on that?
Yeah, Ron, I'm just curious. When I think of this, I sometimes think about having almost like a peripheral, like when you learn to expand your peripheral vision or just a
Right.
sense broader. And it isn't it isn't something where you attend to it and then you come back. You want to be able to do it all at the same time.
Yes.
Takes a little bit of relaxation and just I don't know what. You finally come to a point of feeling it all at once. Is it something we sort of in that realm?
Yes. It's well said. Thank you. That is exactly the process. So we're talking about awareness, and awareness can be exclusive. And when it becomes exclusive, we often call that focused concentration. So I'm narrowing my awareness to a single object of attention or experience. And then there's inclusive awareness, which is expanded. So breath, center, ground, space. To be aware of your space is to expand your peripheral awareness. One way to experience that is to be looking at an object straight ahead, but really be aware of the sides of the room, the peripheral, at the same time. So you can have a central object of attention and a peripheral awareness simultaneously, because we are multi-dimensional beings. We operate, function, and perform on multiple dimensions simultaneously, continuously, all the time. We're just not aware of it. But once you become aware of it, then you have to start to play with it. Another way to describe that is context. I'm listening to the present within a given context. Where am I? What is the situation that I am currently experiencing? Am I in a meeting? Am I walking down the street? Am I by myself? Everything is contextual. And so now when I focus on listening, sensing, and asking what is present, it is also within whatever context I am currently in. That helps to clarify and fine tune your perception of awareness. If you don't have a sense of context, you sit down and you start breathing and you close your eyes and you go into that infinite space of space, and there's no context. It becomes diffused. Your awareness becomes diffused. The input of information becomes diffused because it's a lot of stuff. I want to be able to tune it, focus it like a camera that can zoom in very close on a single point and zoom out and include the context of space, time, and event, whatever that might be. Any other comments or questions?
Yes, I do have a question.
Yes.
I don't know if it fits in there because it's a little bit more specific, but I will just ask it anyway. So when it comes to reacting to something instinctively or by intuition in terms of a physical action, I realize, for example, when playing the piano or horse riding, I can see that my left body half has no problem with that. I don't think, I just do. My right side, I think too much, and then I kind of get stiff, and I'm really like split. Why?
That's a great observation too, because it's switching between the two hemispheres of the brain.
Yeah.
And when you switch into thinking too much, your body starts to freeze. It creates tension because you're pausing to think and process before you act. So this is what Tai Chi, one of the things that Tai Chi is really good for, which is combining and merging the two hemispheres of the brain. Anytime like if you take your hand and you bring it across your center line, here's the center line, and you bring it across the center line, you make a figure eight, or you make a circle, such as moving hands like clouds. You are activating left, right, left, right, left, right in a continuous process. And this is a coordination integration. Eventually, you do that enough, you become what we call whole brain instead of segmented brain. I switch from left to right. Understand? So doing physical movements that require you to cross the center line, using your eyes, looking at with your left eye to the left, your right eye to the right, and going back and forth, opening and closing your eyes, and then using your left eye to look to the right and your right eye to look to the left, and then switching back and forth. This is firing the synapse in the brain, nervous system, whole body to start to work more fluidly and automatically as whole brain instead of on, off. Is that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Good. Yeah. And be creative. Look at different ways. If you're right hand dominant, then try to use your left hand more throughout the day, or vice versa. That's a great exercise for starting to cultivate this whole brain synapse between the two hemispheres. So And if you have a question, just shout out. The process of embodied listening is setting the intention to start to come down out of the mental field into the full body, into all the chakras, so to speak, all the energy systems of the body. And ask, what am I sensing? What am I feeling? With that pause, don't immediately jump into your intellect and say, well, I'm feeling this, so it must mean that, and now I'm going to start reacting to that. You have to be able to give that pause of just pure sensing and listening. As I mentioned before, everybody translates their input in your own unique fashion. Some people are very auditory, some are visual, some are using color and sound. There's no one way or right way to use your imagination to interpret what you are sensing and feeling. The goal is to play with this frequently throughout the day in different contexts. When you're at home with your family, when you're on your way to work, when you're at work, when you're with this person at work versus with another person at work. What are you sensing? What are you feeling? And it's a whole body experience. This takes some training and reconditioning because in our Western society, we become so focused on mental development, on knowledge, that very little in school, as we are developing early in our life, is devoted to the other parts of our multidimensionality, our heart, our gut, learning how to use the imagination to interpret that versus creating what if scenarios. If that was taught earlier on, we would have a more balanced sense in our daily existence. We wouldn't be making choices exclusively on our thoughts, which are often divorced from our feeling in our heart and in our instinct. So taking a moment, you have a choice to make about something. Immediately you're going to think, what should I do? And every time you hear the word should in your mind, I want you to pause and stop. Because should is an alert. It's a cue that is telling you you're in your head. And so when I hear myself say, I think I should, ding, I'm going to take at least 3 fully embodied breaths, let go of the should, let go of the what if, and just listen, just feel, and see what you are getting now in the present. So tuning in and listening to the environment. We're living in a sea of energy, the sea of chi. Within that sea are currents, are streams that are focused energy with intention. If you walk into a room with more than one person, let's say there are 3 people in that room, you're going to have 3 unique energy intention streams within the larger ocean. And if you are sensitive, or if you care to be, tune in and just see what you're getting in terms of that initial feeling, that initial instinct and intuition from each of those people without making an immediate judgment. That's the challenge, because we judge so quickly on autopilot. We get a feeling from somebody and we immediately interpret it based upon what we think. So if I'm in a meeting and somebody is disgruntled in some way, they don't look too happy, the tendency is to want to figure out why. And instead of just listening and feeling and accepting that this is where they are, we want to go into our head and start thinking what it could be. And then, what can I do to change them, to make them feel better? And that's just the social conditioning. And it's not always helpful, by the way. Sometimes I feel it's more important to let the person feel what they're feeling so that they can become clearer about where they are, what is going on, what they need in that moment. But if you jump in right away, I call it tying the shoes syndrome. If you have kids and you raise kids, at a certain point, you've been tying their shoes, and then they stick their foot out in front of you, tie my shoe for me. At a certain point, you have to say, you tie your shoe, you figure it out, and not be so quick to react. And of course, that means they're going to struggle, and they may become reactive, and they may even throw a tantrum. This is where you have to hold the space and say, that's okay. This is all part of figuring it out. You'll get there. So we can do that in our daily life without having to say it out loud. We could, by just allowing people to be where they are, to have their experience without interfering in it. And this is something that I've talked about in the healing and transformation class, of coming to visit a friend in the hospital who's struggling, and instead of immediately trying to change or alter their state, rather coming in and just holding the space for them to experience what they're experiencing in your reflection, like a mirror. That's a rare thing. Rarely, unless you're going to therapy, and you've got a good therapist who can hold that space for you to really just allow yourself to reflect back, sense and feel and perceive clearly. Most of the time, we're too quick to interrupt, too quick to want to change and alter the other person's point of view or state of being. And most often we do it because we ourselves are uncomfortable with someone else being uncomfortable. And if that is the case, you have to look at that and say, why do you always jump in right away and try to make it better? And then ask, does it really help? Are you successful? That instinct to jump in and make it better is also a defensive reaction. It's to try to circumvent the potential negative outcome by distracting or changing it. And as children, we all learn how to do that. If we sense that our parents are upset, we'll use any number of ways to distract them or entertain them. My younger brother was such a comedian. He used humor to do it. He could transform a situation very quickly with that. The problem was the actual problem at hand never got addressed. It just got distracted momentarily through that process. And there are a lot of different ways that we do that. It's okay, and you have to give yourself permission to just hold the space and say, that person's not in a good state. Okay, I'm just going to listen and allow. Trust me when I say that just holding the space to listen and allow in and of itself will allow for change. It allows for spontaneous change and transformation. But if you jump in too soon to manipulate what is actually needed in terms of that discovery process, often doesn't stand a chance. That is why it's important to come back to pause. Take the breath, tune into the body, sense and feel. Ground yourself as that fluid stream of feeling and sensation, moment to moment, breath to breath. Hold the space. So now we're combining all the classes together at once now, so that you can observe in real time, in the present. And when you are fully present and fluid, you can respond to whatever happens spontaneously, instinctively, and intuitively, with all the tools and resources that you have at your disposal. As Paul said, that requires a degree of relaxation. Okay, so for you method trained people out there, use it in that context. It's not just about performance, it's really about listening. And knowing that holding the space, the neutral space, is a very powerful space of infinite potential and creativity. Anything can be created in the neutral space. If you are off to one side or the other in the spectrum of neutral being center, for on one side, against on the other, if you are on either side of that spectrum, you are very limited in what you can do and how you can respond. That's why we want to come back to neutral. This goes back to martial art training for me. When someone approaches you in a threatening fashion, the training kicks in. And it's not about fighting the other person. It's about dealing with yourself in that moment, preventing self from making snap judgments, immediate, habitual judgments about what's happening. Because once you do, now you're flying off to one side or the other of the spectrum. This is good, this is bad. When you become aware, because your survival instinct, your excitement to action is activated, listen without thinking too much or judging. And be alert, but not afraid. The fear comes after you've made the judgment. I've had many experiences living in New York City of scary, threatening people coming up to me and getting right in my face. And over the years, I've gone back and looked at those moments and how I reacted internally and how that translated into the external behavior and action outcome. And some of my most successful experiences have been where I have been able to hold the neutral space of somebody coming up being very aggressive, most often, I would say, mentally unbalanced, emotionally unbalanced. And it's frightening because you don't know what is going to happen. And that's okay, all right? If you immediately say to yourself, they're going to attack me, you're already set on your course of behavior, action, outcome. If you pause and go, I'm going to hold the neutral space. I will look at the person and I will just continue to sense and feel moment to moment. I've diffused so many potential altercations and negative outcomes just by being neutral, in which the person is looking, they are looking for something to attack, something to push on. When you are in neutral, they cannot find it. This is about emptying yourself, so to speak. There's nothing for them to locate that reflects back to them any of their aggression or any fear. If they sense fear, they know they have the upper hand. When you are in neutral, you are not transmitting any of those energies, vibrations, intentions. Confuses the hell out of the other person because they're not used to that. They're used to an immediate, habitual reaction, a defensive reaction. Stress defense for me is kind of an oxymoron. It's not about defending yourself in the way that we think. It's about preserving your integrity and with a sense of grace, which is really kind of disorienting to a person who wants someone to react with fear, with tension, and aggression, because now they have an opportunity to discharge their fear and aggression in the context of that relationship. I know that's a lot to take in, but there is another way. This is the Tai Chi way. Being neutral, grounded, centered, present, listening moment to moment, and responding to what is. As a performer, I did a show on Broadway for a long time, over 2,500 shows of the same show. And you go through these stages. Initially, you're very present. And then it's so ingrained into your body that you stop listening in the present. And then you realize that you're no longer being fully present and listening moment to moment because you start thinking, I know what's going to happen. I know what they're going to say. But then eventually when you stop thinking that, you start feeling what's present. And what is present is always new. Always new. It's not what was before. Yeah, the person's saying the same lines or doing the same scene, but what is present within that person is always new. And that is the level we want to listen. And that is something that you feel. If the words are the same, the action is the same, I can't make an assessment based upon that, on that pattern. I have to go deeper. I have to go into what am I getting? What am I sensing? And now that becomes what I work from and work with. What the gift that I gave myself after probably 1,000 or so shows was to, before going on stage, to say to myself, whatever happens, happens. I don't know what's going to happen. And what I mean by that is I don't know what I will encounter in the present, but I'm open to receive it. And if I'm open to receive it, I tune in to that flow, that stream of the present moment, which is always new, always new, always new. And now I need to stay in that space, listen at that level. And it is embodied, it is not in the head. It's what you're feeling, that impulse, the gut feeling, the heart feeling. Ultimately, your entire body, every cell in your body can be used as that listening device. And that would be fully embodied. You know, we have expressions, I feel it in my bones. That's that deepest level because we have a crystalline structure in our skeleton. It's a matrix of crystal, okay, of living crystal tissue. It resonates. It responds to the energy of the environment, and we can feel it in our bones. If you're willing to tune in that deeply and sense it and feel it. The work is in the beginning, setting the intention to listen at that level and listen without expectation. Don't be in a rush. Don't try to figure it out mentally. I have this image of my mental body, and I call it the conditioned mental body. It's like a lint trap in a dryer. It just accumulates all day long. It just picks up all this mental lint from our environment, from other people, from the news, the media, whatever it is. It's important to remove it and shake it out, brush it out, clear out all of that lint out of the conditioned mental body. It is one dimension within the mental field of the mind. And there are several, imagination being another one. So on a daily basis, I have the, and I actually do this. The action of pulling out the lint trap, shaking it out, get out, put it back in, clear. Clear out your mental field frequently throughout your day because it's cumulative. You're going to be adding to it all day long unless you cleanse it, brain dump it. You know, take a moment and go, I've had a busy morning, a lot of phone calls, a lot of stuff going on. My lint trap is full. I need to clear this out. Sit down, write it out. Clear the mind out, breathe, fluid channel, discharge into the ground. Any images, any echoes within the mental field that are not needed now. Okay. Any comments or questions before we wrap it up?
I Yeah, I think that the note that's coming to my head is I feel like so many times I want to do it. And then what the social conditioning and the mental conditioning and what one is used to. I know I keep feeling it's going to take so long. So it
Mm,
just,
doesn't take time, takes intention.
and practice. I think if one just
Repetition,
gets the rep,
repetition. Yeah, just
yeah,
like anything. You want to be
yeah,
proficient at anything, you have to repeat it. It has to become integrated into your lifestyle.
yeah.
Now, this implies that you're going to be updating your inner operating system of how you see yourself, which determines how you operate, function, and perform on a daily basis. It's important to update and upgrade your inner operating system daily. Daily. So here's a practice. When you wake up in the morning, sit up on the bed before you even stand up. Start breathing into your body and ask this question of yourself. Who am I today? This is a powerful question. Who am I today? And we ask that question knowing that we are not the same person now, in that moment, as we were yesterday or the day before, because we are constantly changing. We are fluid, and we have to start to develop an identity that is fluid and flexible and adaptive, especially for what we're going to be encountering in this accelerated state of change. Okay? So when I ask that of myself, who am I today? I'm not looking for an immediate answer. I know that I don't really know at that moment. I have to discover who I am today. And so at the end of the day, I now ask that question again. Who am I today? And this is where journaling comes in. I journal in the morning, I journal in the afternoon, I journal in the evening. And I write down what I have discovered about myself, what I experienced. How did I respond or react to those events today? I'm developing a continually expanding awareness and an image of myself not as fixed, but as fluid. And that means that I am willing to transform continuously. Not always easy, not always pleasant. That's okay. How much of your day is always pleasant and easy? That's just life. But approaching it from that point of view gives you more agency over the process of living and increases your perception of how you're operating, functioning, and performing. And you start to realize I'm constantly changing. It's only when you try to freeze that identity, which a lot of people do, they don't want to change because it's too scary. You know, what if? What's going to happen? I don't know. I don't know can be, well, it is a two-edged sword. It can be exciting not to know, or it can be frightening not to know, depending on how you choose to use that. For me, I choose excitement, curiosity. Let's go in and see what there is, because that's why I'm here. I'm here to have that discovery process, to explore the unpredictability of life and learn from that. That's, for me, why I'm here. Not everybody looks at it that way. And a lot of people just want to lock it in and say, this is who I am and I'm not going to change and you can't make me. And we see that a lot now. You know, people believing in things that are just completely absurd, but they derive a sense of power out of holding on to that belief, even knowing that it's absurd, but they're going to do it because that gives them a sense of stability, certainty, and power, even if it's not true. And anybody can do that. And we all do it to some degree at different points in time. It's like trying to build a dam on the biggest river of life. It's not going to last very long before the force of life, that stream, breaks that wall down. And then it becomes an identity crisis and a healing crisis. Because now they realize I'm not as powerful as I thought I was. I can't hold and sustain this fixed state. We have to be fluid. Thank you very much for coming today.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye.